Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. On Monday, a man accused of shooting and killing his roommates in Franklinton pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder. WRAL's Destinee Patterson was in the courtroom for that plea and also heard some pretty powerful speeches from the families of the 2 men killed. Destinee, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So let's back up a little bit. When did these murders happen, and what did we know about those deaths before Monday's court hearing?
So the murders happened back in April.
Christian Webster pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of William Hulme and Matthew Johnson at their home in April. Police say Webster expressed wanting to harm people since he was a child.
And we knew that the 2 men who were killed were in a relationship, so they were a couple. We had also gotten some information from court documents that detailed the fact that the men were shot to death, and we knew that Webster had previously been involuntarily admitted into a psychiatric hospital for evaluation. So we knew some of these elements going into Monday's hearing.
And as we came into that hearing, what were we expecting to find out? How did we also find out about this hearing?
We knew going into this that we would get a little bit more detail in terms of the nature of the victim's death. And we also were expecting to basically hear what would be next in terms of sentencing and a possible plea deal with the defendant in this case.
And as you came into the courtroom, walk us through what played out and just kind of what the vibe was inside the courtroom.
So the court hearing started at 2 o'clock, almost exactly 2 o'clock on the dot.
The Supreme Superior Court is back in the session. I'm Henry W. Pike Jr., judge presiding. Please be seated and come to order.
And we wrapped things up just about 3:30, 3:45. So throughout that whole process, we heard from multiple witnesses that took the stand, one of them being an expert witness that spoke to Webster's mental capacity and ability to proceed with these court hearings.
And thus it would be my opinion that as defined by North Carolina law, underlying that's defined by Destinee v. U.S., that he is psychiatrically ill, but nonetheless possesses more than adequate resources to fulfill each of the functional requirements to review this case.
And we also heard from another witness who's actually a detective with the Franklinton Police Department who responded that day.
The first officer who arrived observed a male running into the residence with a long gun. At the time, we backed off due to this nature until backup arrived. For approximately 2 to 3 hours, we negotiated over the phone with Mr. Webster. Eventually he came out without incident, and he was involuntarily committed to Mariah Franklin Hospital.
And we heard from someone within the Sheriff's Department as well in Franklin County.
Is it your understanding that the shotgun, the rifle, and the knife were all used in the commission of these murders?
Yes.
And can you just tell the court where the victims were found in the home?
One victim was located upstairs in the bathroom, in the bathtub. The second victim was located downstairs on the floor.
So we heard from several different people, and then by the end, as things were wrapping up, we also got to hear some victim impact statements from family members and loved ones of the victims involved in this case, which of course was very emotional.
Were you surprised to hear a plea on Monday, and why were prosecutors able to move so quickly with this case? For this to have just happened in April seems a lot quicker than a lot of cases we see.
Yeah, it's definitely unusual for a case like this to have moved through so quickly. So after court wrapped up today, that was one of the first things that I asked District Attorney Mike Waters, why did things move so quickly? He told me that basically Webster took responsibility pretty early on. He admitted that he had killed the 2 victims in this case, and he said that there was very little information that was not factual going into this. They didn't have to do quite as much by way of collecting evidence and proving that this was their guy because he had already admitted to it. So that was a big piece of getting things rolling much quicker than maybe they normally would have. Another element to this is that because Webster is not going to be facing the death penalty in this case, the district attorney explained to me that it makes things much quicker. Had they had any sort of dispute about how they would proceed with this, then that would take longer in terms of the court system and going through a trial. He said it could have been 3 to 4 years.
All right, let's take a quick break right there and we'll be right back. Destinee, as you said earlier, we heard those victim impact statements from the families of the two men killed in this case. What stood out to you about the statements that they made?
Well, I think the obvious one is that William Hulme's father, Tom Hulme, he was very, very emotional during his victim impact statement. He had raised his voice both at the district attorney as well as the judge at one point.
I would be ashamed to be an attorney, especially somebody that proposes to defend it. It is who is sitting by that attorney. I will refer to it in this discussion. This book right here explains justice. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, blood for blood. And God commissions me as the head of the family to avenge the blood of my family. And I would gladly do the same thing to that man right in front of everybody here that he did to our boys. Only for 8 hours, we forgot to mention the torture. There was 4 hours of torture between the first shot of bird shot in the face. And then he separated them because it wanted more control. And we're going to send him to a hotel and pay for his upkeep the rest of his life. That's wrong. That is wrong. We have become too toothless in our justice system.
You could really feel his anger and the way that things were handled in his son's case. Along with his impact statement, we also heard from several other loved ones.
Matthew met Will, and they seemed to be the partners each were looking for in this life. Our family took in Will like he was always been a member of our family, celebrating Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays together. They were both so proud to buy a house and start their lives together, and yes, they were gay, just the way God made them.
And we heard a poem from a friend. But overall, the feeling was just this feeling of sadness, of course. Like they lost people whom they loved so much, and people that they describe as really great individuals, just great people who had love for each other and for others around them. So we really got to hear more about what Matt Johnson and William Hulme were really like.
And how did Webster react when those different statements were being given?
So Webster actually avoided making eye contact or even looking at most of the loved ones in the courtroom. I counted 14 people that were there in support of the victims, and he did not look their way while they were making their impact statements. At one point, Tom Hulme asked Webster to say his nickname, and that was the only thing that Christian Webster said the entire time, and he said that his nickname was War Dog. So that was the only interaction that Webster had with any of the loved ones during that court hearing.
What is the sentence that he was given with this plea deal?
So now Christian Webster will spend the rest of his life in prison, and that was part of the plea deal that he was able to work out. So instead of him facing the death penalty, he'll spend the rest of his life. He has 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. And if you remember, I had also mentioned that Webster had previously been involuntarily admitted for psychiatric evaluation. And that was because he was charged with discharging a weapon in city limits. And part of that plea deal was getting that charge dismissed. But again, he will spend the rest of his life in prison.
Were you able to catch up with any of the families outside the courtroom, and what were their reactions to that sentence?
By the time the family members stepped out of the courtroom, it seemed like they were able to grapple with their emotions a little bit better than they had during the court hearing. I talked with William Hulme's father, Tom Hulme.
Will, again, is sorely missed by us and the entire family, all his friends. And we've got to see the injustice of the justice system firsthand. This is the first interlude I've had with criminal justice, and it is horribly, horribly broken. The legal system and the mental health system counteract each other, and they cause so much extra energy in arguing cases that shouldn't even have to be argued.
And I also talked with Matthew Johnson's mother.
You know, at the beginning, I just like Matthew, always tried to give people the benefit of the doubt. You know, you always want to think that there's good in everybody. But after seeing him today and seeing his reactions to everything, there are evil people. There are evil people among us. And something needs to be done. These people need to be contained. You know, and like I said, I worked in behavioral health. I have a family member that's had mental issues. I'm not condemning the people that are mentally ill by no means. They need help. But I feel like the system in general has let them down, let everyone down.
And they both mentioned the fact that they want to see reforms in the mental health system. They believe that that was ultimately what led to their loved one's death.
Well, thank you so much, Destinee, and thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email that's waiting in your inbox every morning with local news, events, and headlines to get you ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.